All right, welcome back to the channel. So, Floyd Mayweather Jr. has a toxic legacy that has inspired a new generation of duck artists. Or at least that's the story that Oscar Valdez is singing, which I think is just a little bit wrong. He's got a point in one way, but there's something more significant about that maybe he should consider. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. So, Floyd Mayweather Jr., one of the greatest fighters to ever do it. Definitely, in my opinion, the best fighter and definitely the most successful fighter, of this century. 50-0 is one of the things that he talks about and holds himself up as, the fact that he went undefeated his whole career. He beat more champions, like, I don't know how many, 23 current and ex-title holders. Wouldn't call them champions, but would call them title holders. But a lot of really good things that he did in his career. Nothing more significant than the dang near $1 billion that he made in that boxing ring. And he did that by and large because of the approach that he took in the second half of his fight. And, hey, that's his goal. He set out, he made it. He's a legend, right? Now, there's a lot of problems in boxing right now, in that there's a lot of fights that are not taking place between fighters, right? And Oscar Valdez, who is the former 126-pound WBO champion, former duck artist associated with Shakur Stevenson. And maybe I'm thinking that the reason why he's saying what he's saying is because he's trying to explain why he ducked Shakur Stevenson. I don't quite get where he's coming from, why he would say this, but he says that, Errol, that the legacy of Floyd Mayweather Jr. was, that you have to be undefeated. And so now the fighters don't want to take risks because they don't want to be undefeated. They don't want to get a loss on their record because they know if they're going to get a loss on their record, then they may not be able to get future fights. So, as a result, everybody is a whole bunch of people are ducking fights and all of this stuff, right? So that's what he says is Floyd Mayweather Jr. and his model, his model of getting fights and growing his bank account results in a bunch of people ducking people. Okay, now let's look at that. First and foremost, that's obviously bull crap, right? First and foremost, that's garbage. Okay, because the biggest money, the fact that people believe that, I don't know. Is that actually the truth? Absolutely not. You can look at fighters like Canelo Alvarez, Mike Tyson, Oscar De La Hoya, Holyfield. You can look at all kind of great fighters that have losses, and they continue to make as much money, and were able to continue to get fights even though they had losses. So I don't believe primarily that the reason why some of these guys aren't fighting people is because they feel like they need to be undefeated in order to make a bunch of money. I think the reason is just cut to the chase. The reason why a lot of these fights aren't taking place is because the fighter thinks he's going to lose, period. And he doesn't want to lose to that fighter. Not that if you lose, you'll never be able to get another win again and all that. No, it's just because they don't think that they can beat the fighter, period. It's not about the money. For example, Canelo Alvarez, right? Canelo Alvarez has a fight that he could be making with Jermall Charlo. The fact that he ain't fighting Jermall Charlo ain't got anything to do with him feeling if he loses the fight, then, his career is over because he has a loss. Canelo Alvarez already has a loss. He's got one to Floyd Mayweather Jr. And only thing that happened after he lost to Floyd Mayweather Jr. is that his paychecks went up. No, he doesn't want to fight Jermall Charlo because Jermall Charlo could be beating him. Now, who might not want Jermall Charlo to fight Canelo Alvarez? That, my friend, seems to be number one, Canelo Alvarez, because he doesn't think that he can win. And also the network that is paying Canelo Alvarez the money for the fight, because they don't want Canelo Alvarez to win. They don't want Canelo Alvarez to lose. So they're not going to put him in there with a slick southpaw like Demetrius Andrade or somebody like Jamal Charlo, because they figure that they can get more value out of Canelo Alvarez if he's going to fight fights where he looks, number one, he looks spectacular, and number two, where he wins. Because if the second that he loses, in their mind, his value goes down. It doesn't make him any less of a fighter. It's not gonna affect, it's not gonna hurt the sport of boxing. It's because of what the promoter or the network wants out of that fight is the reason why a lot of these fights aren't taking place. People like to have in-house fights. In-house fights mean that no matter who wins, you win, right? And you can arrange those in-house fights to happen at a time where the skill sets of the two fighters, where one is coming down and the other one is coming up, and you can create an illusion that this up-and-coming fighter has now beaten this veteran fighter and all of that type of crap. But that ain't got anything to do with Floyd Mayweather Jr. Floyd Mayweather Jr. wasn't alive when all of those heavyweights in the early 1900s decided that they were not going to fight black fighters. Right? Now notice they didn't refuse to fight, any black fighters. They just refused to fight in the weight classes where the black fighters were the best fighters. They decided not to take the fights. And that's because of a fear of losing. Now, if Oscar Valdez is saying that this is the reason why the fights don't happen, again, that's why what Oscar Valdez is afraid of. Oscar Valdez is afraid of losing. And I guarantee you, I'll tell you, like when he said something about Shakur Stevenson, right? Because people are saying Oscar Valdez ducked Shakur Stevenson because he moved from the WBO. He dropped his WBO 126-pound belt to move to 130 pounds when Shakur Stevenson was in that weight class. Now, I have a suspicion that was a calculated move, not just on Oscar Valdez's part, but on Top Rank's part, right? Because why would they, and I've said this on multiple videos that are going to come up today and tomorrow, that's not a good value. That's not a good value proposition for Top Rank to lose Oscar Valdez altogether and against Shakur Stevenson when they can just move Oscar Valdez up and have two champions instead of one. That seems to me to be part Top Rank, but also top Oscar Valdez, dude. Because also Top Rank and part Oscar Valdez. Oscar Valdez could try to insist on the fight with Shakur Stevenson, but that's not even the tone. But that's not the tone that he took when he's describing the fight. He's saying things like, well, Miguel Berchelt is a much tougher fight than Shakur Stevenson. No, he is not. Oscar Valdez, stop lying. Because Shakur Stevenson is not there to be hit. Yes, Miguel Berchelt I can't say yes. Maybe Miguel Berchelt hits harder than Shakur Stevenson. Maybe. And I mean a big maybe on that. But but Shakur Stevenson is a southpaw. Miguel Berchelt isn't. Miguel Berchelt isn't somebody that is going to be fighting on the outside, that's slipping your punches, that is very difficult to hit and is countering you and making you think, slowing you down, slowing the fight down where he wants the fight to be slowed down. Heck no, dude, that is a much more difficult match style-wise for Oscar Valdez than Miguel Berchelt is. Because Miguel Berchelt is a come-forward fighter, Oscar Valdez is a come-forward fighter, and they're going to meet together. Boom, right in the middle, and they're going to let their hands go. Oscar Valdez is going to be able to get shots off on Berchelt. Berchelt is going to get shots off on Oscar Valdez. But it's going to be a fight that Oscar Valdez is going to be more in. He's going to be closer or have a better chance of catching Miguel Berchelt or outworking Miguel Berchelt than he would Shakur Stevenson. So I'm just not, like I said, I'm not buying it, dude. The reason why Oscar Valdez isn't fighting Shakur Stevenson is the same reason that Oscar Valdez didn't fight Gary Russell Jr. And that is because he would have lost. Oscar Valdez was going to lose 11 rounds to 11 rounds to 1 against Gary Russell Jr. He's going to lose 11, 12 rounds to none against Shakur Stevenson. And by the way, same scenario, but with Miguel Berchelt, he has a legitimate chance to get a win in that fight, and that's why he doesn't want to fight Shakur Stevenson. And that same equation is the reason why a lot of these fights are not happening. That's why a lot of the fights with Demetrius Andrade isn't taking place. That's the reason why a lot of fights with Jamal Charlo is not taking place. That's the reason why fights for years with Guillermo Rigondeaux weren't taking place. Got nothing to do with the undefeated thing. Got a lot more to do with the fact that you can't beat the dudes that you're talking about. So anyway, that's my take on the matter. You let me know what you think in the comment section. Make sure you share, like, and subscribe. And with that, I'm out. Peace.